Hey y'all, good morning. Ooh, weak. Somebody didn't get an extra hour of sleep last night. Good morning. Okay, hi. Welcome to the Daniel Bible Study. We're going to get rolling. We are in Daniel chapter 7 today. Just as a quick reminder, I do this pretty well every week, but I like to remind us where we're at. So the structure of the book is that there are 6 narratives or episodes in chapters 1 through 6. These are things that happen in Daniel's life or in the life of the 3 amigos or both. Then it's followed by 4 visions in chapters 7 through 12. Since we are in chapter 7 today, that means that we are going to be looking at the first vision together. So the first of 4 visions that God gives to Daniel. We'll be looking at that today in chapter 7. So some of you may have had a chance to do a little bit of homework and read the chapter 7 and that vision ahead of time. Some of you may not have had that opportunity. So I'm going to give you just a few minutes now in your table groups, and you can look over the vision that God gives to Daniel and check out the major features of that vision. And then we'll talk about it as a large group. And go.
Like he's got it figured out.
Okay, so giving you just a few minutes there to look over things. What do you make of this vision that Daniel has? Weird, amazing. Steve says, sounds like Revelation, nightmare. Anybody got an interpretation for the vision? He sees, okay. Does the vision, here, I'll hand it to you on a silver platter. Does the vision sound familiar at all? Oh, it sounds like Revelation, okay. Y'all are going with
Is it like the
genre.
Is it like the previous vision he had with Nebuchadnezzar?
Yeah, so do y'all remember the vision with Nebuchadnezzar and the statue? Guess what? This is a repeat. It's the same vision, but not. And the fact that some of y'all said it sounds like Revelation, there's a reason for that. So we'll talk about it here in a second. This vision is the longest single part of this text in the original that is not written in Hebrew. It's written in Aramaic. So you don't need to know this, but I think it helps to know what you're dealing with, because you're not dealing with America, and you're not dealing with English, and you're not dealing with American culture. You're dealing with somewhere else, okay? And you're dealing with another culture, another language. So if you look to your right, that's Hebrew script, okay? And if you look to your left, that's Aramaic. If they look like they're in some ways related, it's because they are. Aramaic ends up influencing the shape of Hebrew script after the Babylonian captivity. So before the Babylonian captivity, the script on the right didn't look like it does today. It looks like it does today after the Babylonian captivity, and the people of Israel come back to Jerusalem speaking Aramaic instead of Hebrew. You remember we talked about that? So they come back speaking Aramaic. By the time of Jesus, they still have not recovered Hebrew. They're still speaking Aramaic, which is why Jesus spoke Aramaic. Okay? Modern Jews have recovered Hebrew, but the way they speak it is probably not the way it sounded to King David. Everybody with me? It's the language, the spoken language, the modern language of Hebrew has changed somewhat. Okay? And that's common. The way we speak English is not the way King Arthur spoke it. You know what I mean? So actually he didn't speak English. Never mind. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole. You get where I'm going, okay? English changes, Greek changes, Hebrew changes, but the script changes after Babylonian captivity, in part because it is acted upon as a language by the influence of Aramaic, which is to the left. And Daniel is written in both Hebrew and Aramaic, and this vision is written in all Aramaic. This is the longest section. This vision is the longest section that is written in Aramaic in the book of Daniel. What time period are we in? Daniel has this dream, he says, in the first year of Belshazzar. So we're back in the Neo-Babylonian Empire. This is before the Persians conquer Babylon. Everybody with me? You have to keep where you are in the timeline straight. So the first year of King Belshazzar would make this about 10 years, about a decade before Persia will eventually conquer Babylon and assimilate that empire into their ever-growing empire. Okay? This is about 10 years before the Persian conquest of Babylon. And some scholars think that they can date this dream to the same year that Cyrus defeated his grandfather to merge the kingdoms of the Medes and the Persians into the new budding Medo-Persian Empire. So in other words, Cyrus had to defeat his grandfather in order to merge the Medes and the Persians, in order to make a fighting force and a national GDP and everything else you need large enough to take on the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Some scholars date this dream in the first year of Belshazzar. That's the same year that Cyrus went against his grandfather to merge into the Medo-Persian Empire out east. So they think they can date this dream to the same year that that happened. Okay? As I said, this is a repeat of the dream that God gave to Nebuchadnezzar years and years and years earlier, of the statue with the four kingdoms, and each kingdom is represented by a different metal on the statue. Y'all remember that, right? Way back from chapter 2. Okay, so way back from chapter 2, and now in chapter 7 we get a dream that God gives to Daniel of 4 beasts, and we'll talk about those here in a minute. Some of you said this sounds like Revelation. You did not say that the dream that God gave Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 2 sounded like Revelation. I'm glad that y'all are intuiting that. So Daniel, I said at the beginning, contains prophecy. The book contains prophecy, but as a genre, anybody remember what genre I told you this book is? Apocalyptic. It's apocalyptic. So the reason that it sounds like Revelation is because Revelation in the New Testament is also what genre? Apocalyptic. And this is why. If you look at a Hebrew Bible that's in Hebrew, a Jewish friend of yours, or you come to my office, if you look at a Bible that's in Hebrew, there are 3 divisions: Torah, Nevi'im, the Ketuvim. So the law, the prophets, and then the Ketuvim and the writings. Daniel's in the writings. He's not in the prophets, because the genre is apocalyptic. Well, if you remember from our study of Revelation, what's the point of apocalyptic as a genre of literature in the Bible? Is it to terrify people with visions of the future and the end of the world and blood and smoke? No. What is it meant to do?
So the opposite, to give you hope.
It's to give you hope and comfort, especially if you're a believer. It's really hope and comfort for the believer. Why is it hope and comfort for the believer? Because Jesus wins. And then we as the church share in that victory. Yes? Because Jesus wins and we as the church share that victory. I told y'all way back when we studied Revelation, it always makes me sad when Christians say, Pastor, I can't understand the book of Revelation, or it scares me to read it. That makes me sad in my heart, because the whole reason it was written down in the first place was not to make you scared. It was to give you hope that no matter how bad it's getting, God is still on his throne, Jesus wins, and we as the church share the victory with our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Everybody with me? Why give the dream to Daniel again? Well, because the dream that God gave to Nebuchadnezzar years and years ago, when Daniel was still a younger man, was a dream given to a pagan king. And you notice that it's light on detail. All God tells Nebuchadnezzar is, there's going to be 4 kingdoms. You're the first. This is my plan to carry out amongst the kings of the earth. I'm going to use these kingdoms for my eventual glory, but eventually my kingdom will begin. the kingdom of heaven will begin on earth, and it will grow and fill the whole earth. And that's all that it is. This vision in chapter 7 is given to Daniel for the believers. And there's way more detail, specifically in regards to that. Y'all remember in Nebuchadnezzar's dream in chapter 2, there's a stone that falls from heaven and it destroys the statue and it grows into a great mountain. Y'all with me? Well, that's all you're told. But in chapter 7, you're told way more. What are you told in chapter 7? About that stone that becomes a great mountain and fills all the earth. What are you told in chapter 7 in this apocalyptic section? There's one, what's he called? There's a son of man, the son of man, and he comes to the Ancient of Days, and the Ancient of Days does something for the Son of Man. What does the Ancient of Days do? He gives him authority and a kingdom, and that kingdom will never end. Are y'all with me? You get way more detail. You get to see into the throne room of God, and you see this interaction between the Father and the Son in the throne room of heaven. Are y'all with me? So this is not for unbelievers. This is not for a pagan king. Nebuchadnezzar wouldn't even know what he was looking at if God had told him. This is for the believers. Are y'all with me? And so that's why it's apocalyptic in genre now. And that's why you think it sounds like Revelation, because it does. And the idea is to give comfort. Is Daniel personally comforted? No. So if you've ever read Revelation, you said, that doesn't comfort me, that terrifies me, you're in good company. Because that's how Daniel felt when God told him what was going to happen. He says he was anxious. He said his spirit within him was anxious. Now, this is before Sigmund Freud. Tell me about your mother, right? This is before psychology. So he doesn't have a way to say, I went for my anxiety meds. You know what I'm saying, right? He doesn't have language for that, and he doesn't have meds for that. However, people are still people. And he's anxious, and he has a word for that. Okay, this produces anxiety in Daniel. He's walking around, and he says he kept it to himself. Can you imagine being told something like this by God, and you just walk around and you're having to keep it to yourself? Why would you have to keep it to yourself?
He didn't want everyone to think he was crazy.
Because if you told anybody, they'd think you were nuts. Sometimes you just got to be nuts. All right. Questions, problems, comments to this point?
Why did he keep, besides him afraid of being nuts, like why did he keep it to himself if it was for believers? There are just not enough believers to tell.
He eventually wrote it down, which is why we have it. But yeah, he waited until late in his life, or right before his death or whatever. He waited till he was really old, and then he wrote it down. Because now if you think I'm nuts, I'm gone anyway. And then also 10 years later, remember that 10 years later also the second kingdom comes on the scene. So if the first kingdom is Babylon and the second kingdom is Persia, he's already seen the first domino fall. So he knows that this is not just I had a bad sandwich and then had a bad dream. You know what I mean? He knows that this is a real vision from the Lord because he sees the first domino fall 10 years later. So he writes it down for people. Yeah. Yeah. Every Shabbat they got together to drink the Manischewitz. And they talked about, I'm just talking about Jewish culture, man. They got together and they drank the Manischewitz and they talked. He had people he could have shared it with, but he didn't. Because even if you're talking to unbelievers, sometimes you just feel crazy. Like I remember when I was telling y'all about the build out, and I told you that God told me that we had to do something, whether it's the prayer chapel or however we're going to do it, but that it had to be a house of prayer for all people and it had to be open 24 hours a day. And I told y'all that God told me that. And the first time I had to tell that to the elders, the first time I had to tell it to the council, the first time I had to tell it to the church, I thought, let's see how many people look like they think I'm crazy. You know what I mean? And that's just something simple. You know what I mean? Like that's something simple. That's not like a great vision of the future or something. That's just something simple. And I still thought some of you would think I was nuts. You know what I mean? So sometimes you just keep these things to yourself for a while. So he did. Well, let's talk about the vision. We've got the 4 beasts, and this isn't, I mean, super. I mean, maybe you can kind of see that. So there's 4 beasts. The first beast is what? A lion with, don't leave off the wings. That's cool. The theological term for that is rock and roll. Okay. It's a lion with wings. It's a Pegasus Aslan from Narnia. It's Aslan the upgrade. Come on, that's rock and roll. Yeah, he's got to have a cool voice. So it's a lion with wings, but then what happens to the wings? Oh, they get torn off. Oh, and then the beast is given the mind of a human. Okay, so it's got reason. Next comes a what? Big bad bear.
So
Lions and tigers and bears. Oh my.
were there bears in that part of the world?
We're going to get to that in a minute.
Okay,
That's a great question.
that's the first thing I thought.
Well, but were there lions in that part of the world? You know, it always, like when I'm teaching students and stuff, and like we're in Judges and we get to Samson, and Samson kills a lion with his bare hands. And I'm like, anybody got a problem with the story? They never have a problem. Like, if I bought you a plane ticket to Tel Aviv, Israel right now, and you got off the plane in Israel and you got a rental car and you went around Israel, would you see a lion? And they were like, no. Then how did he kill a lion? And then it's just blank stares. There used to be lion. There was a Palestinian lion which was larger than its sub-Saharan cousin that is still around today. So Samson didn't just kill a lion. If you've ever been on safari or you've been to the Henry Dorley Zoo over in Omaha and you saw a big male lion with the big mane, that on steroids, that's what Samson killed. He was a bad mamma jamma, okay? So there you go. You're welcome. And yeah, we'll get to the bear question in a second. But there's a bear, and boy, does he ever look like a bear. What's going on with the bear? He's got 3 ribs. Is that a southern bear? Is that a southern bear? That bear named Pookie. That's a southern bear. He's been getting into the smoker again. He got 3 ribs in his mouth. He got 3 bones. Okay, so he's got 3 ribs in his mouth. Then, oh, now this is very rock and roll. What's the next creature? A 4-headed leopard. I know. If I ever won the lottery, I think I could get me hooked up with one of those. I'd talk to a nerd in a laboratory and I'd say, clone me a leopard and give it 4 heads. How crazy would that be, walking around the pool area? And 4 wings. Hey, we could try that too. What kind of mess is this dream? You see why he's terrified. He wakes up, he's like, what in the world? It's a 4-headed leopard with 4 wings. We'll talk about that in a minute, but that's Greece. Okay, that's Greece, if we're talking about who these stand for. And then there's the last beast, and whatever you think it's not really described other than it has the 10 horns and iron teeth, right, and bronze claws, but it doesn't tell you what else it looked like. So sure, it looked like whatever that thing is. And that's Rome, and we'll talk more about it in a second, okay? So the first beast is a lion with wings. Now, this is me stretching a little bit because it can just be arbitrary. It's just 4 beasts and they represent the 4 kingdoms, okay? It can just be arbitrary, but I do find it interesting. That this is a wall relief from the Neo-Babylonian Empire, and they seem to have a fascination with winged lions. Like, has anyone ever seen a unicorn running around Scotland? Where's Sutton? You were over there. Did you see a unicorn running around Scotland? All over the place, yeah. But what's the national animal of Scotland? It's a unicorn. Anybody ever been to Wales? Did you see a dragon running around Wales? But what's the national animal of Wales? It's a dragon. So cultures can have a fascination with mythical creatures, and this is a mythical creature. It's a lion with wings, and the Babylonians were fascinated with that, like we might be fascinated with a unicorn. Okay, and so there's a wall relief from the Neo-Babylonian Empire, and so the first kingdom is Babylon. The second kingdom is the bear. Give credit here to Joel Sartore, who was the photographer. I just want to make sure, because this is going on the internet. I can use this because it's for teaching purposes, but I just want everybody to know. This is a book called The Photo Ark, and it's awesome. If you ever have a chance to take a look at it or pick it up. This is from a book called The Photo Ark. This guy went around trying to document the biodiversity of planet Earth. This is a Syrian bear. It's a brown bear, but it's a Syrian bear. They're very rare because they no longer exist in Syria, from whence they get their name. They used to be in Israel. So references to bears in Israel, they used to have them. They're extinct now, they're gone. They're still running around parts of the Middle East, though. There's very few of them left, period. They're very rare. Please don't go extinct. But this is a Syrian bear. Look at that punum. You just want to pet him. And then you'd lose 3 ribs in your arm. So I think it's interesting that Persia is pictured as a bear. We have writings of some Jewish rabbis from that time period, and the Jewish rabbis like to make fun of Persians by calling them bears. Do you know, like in the 80s, whenever we wanted to like have a caricature of a Russian as the bad guy in an 80s film, he's always some huge dude with big hairy arms, swilling vodka. He's got a big coat on, and you know, you try to fight him and he's got like big meaty hand. You know what I'm talking about? That's the way Jews looked at Persians. They thought they looked like bears because they would eat too much. Gluttony was part of the culture. They were fat and they're hairy. Like if you've ever met a Persian, someone from Iran, they're hairy. So they called them bears. Some Jewish rabbis called them bears to make fun of them. Okay? So Persia here is represented by a bear. The Greeks are represented by a 4-headed leopard. I don't know if you can see this. Probably not. It is well attested to that Alexander the Great, who conquered that big Greek empire for the Greeks, he rode around with a leopard skin on his horse. Now, I don't know where he got it because he would have had to get it in trade from sub-Saharan Africa, but he rode around with a leopard skin on his horse. Okay? And after Alexander conquered his entire empire, what's the next thing that happened to poor old Alex? He died. Everybody know that? He died like basically right after conquering everything. He died. He was going to retire at like the ripe old age of like 26 or whatever. And then he died. Okay? After he died, do y'all know what happened to the Greek Empire? It was divided into 4 parts. It's a 4-headed leopard. And it's divided into 4 parts. The 4 generals who served under Alexander, who divided up his vast empire, were Antigonus, Cassander, Ptolemy, may remember that name from history class, and Seleucus, but you may remember that name more as the Seleucid kingdom or empire. Everybody with me? So you have the Ptolemaic kingdom, the Antigonid kingdom, the Seleucid kingdom, and then you have other Greek states under Cassander. So Alexander comes and he conquers all of this, riding on a leopard skin. And then after his death, right after he conquers all of that land that you see highlighted for you there, his kingdom is divided into 4 parts. So when I say that this is for believers and that this is a more detailed vision that God is giving to Daniel, I really mean it. Hey, this kingdom is represented by a 4-headed leopard. Get it? It's divided into 4. The beast with 10 horns, you should remember from Revelation. And yes, that is a creepy little horn with a face on it. I can't believe what you can find on Google. It's amazing. You can find a creepy little horn with a face on it if you need to. Just letting you know. So the beast, though, with 10 horns should sound familiar because you saw that beast in the book of Revelation, except the difference is that the 10 horns, instead of being on one head, how many heads did the beast have? Do you remember? Now it's 7. So Rome in the book of Revelation is represented as the beast with 10 horns, just like in Daniel. The difference is in Revelation, the beast has 7 heads, 1 head for each of the 7 hills upon which the city of Rome rests. So Rome is famously known for being the city on 7 hills. There's 7 hills in ancient Rome. Now today Rome is bigger and it's urban sprawl like everywhere else. But originally, like ancient Rome, like with the Caesars and stuff, the city had 7 hills. So in Revelation, this 10-horned beast that is Rome was represented as 10 horns on 7 heads. Everybody with me? But it's the same beast. So the beast with 10 horns is Rome, and it's really different from everything else that's ever come before it. And Rome has been really different from everything else that's ever come before it. In fact, in many ways, the Roman influence continued up until quite recently. I'd say post-World War II. Everybody was still indebted to Greco-Roman culture, Greco-Roman architecture, Greco-Roman thinking about government and how to do things. I mean, for goodness sake, Luther grew up in the Holy Roman Empire, which was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire, right? But why did the German states call themselves the Holy Roman Empire? Because everybody's trying to recreate the glory of Rome. It's a very different animal than anything else that came before it. And through archaeological evidence that we found in some of our most recent digs, some historians are now putting forward a pretty strong argument that the Roman Empire was probably only a few decades away, maybe 30 years from completely industrializing. So in other words, the Industrial Revolution that in school you learn started in places like England. That many years later, like thousands of years later, finally, the West industrialized with the steam engine and all that. There's archaeological records that are showing that Rome was probably way back then, that early, about 30 years away from industrializing. That's how advanced they were. That's nuts when you think about it. Gives a new meaning to the Dark Ages, when Rome fell and everybody lost all that knowledge. So there's a little horn with a creepy face. Who's the little horn? I'll give you a hint. It's the same as the little horn in Revelation. So God sent his Christ. I'll hand it to you on a silver platter. God sent his Christ, and then this guy is the Antichrist. There you go. So this little horn is the Antichrist, or spirit of Antichrist. Okay. So it's the same thing that you've got in Revelation. Now, I told you when we studied Revelation that there are Christian groups, most notably in America, a very large Protestant denomination like the Southern Baptist Convention, that theologically the way they read Revelation is they go to Daniel and then they do one-to-one comparisons between Daniel and Revelation. That's not completely wrong. And I told you at the time it's not completely wrong. But I told you that it would be better, instead of going from Daniel to Revelation, where did I want us to start? No. Huh? Somebody said it. The Gospels, because who's the first person to teach us definitively about the end? Jesus. And who's the guy talking to John in the vision on Patmos? Jesus. So instead of going to Daniel, why don't you go to Jesus? See, it's a good Lutheran answer. Go to Jesus first, then go to Daniel, then go to Revelation. You can go, but just run it through the Gospels, though, is what I'm telling you. Okay? So I told you that he sees a son of man. Let's talk about this son of man. Let's go there. Look in chapter 6. Verse 13 and following. Somebody want to, well, you don't have a microphone. I'll just read it to you. All right. Everybody see verse 13? I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man. Let's just stop there. Like, we can't even keep going. Is that giving anybody, is that triggering a memory for you? Something that got said once? And behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man. Oh, we don't know what chapter we're in. Sorry, it's Daniel 7.
6, but really.
Oh, my bad. I mean 7.
Yeah.
Turn to where I mean, not to where I say. I mean Daniel 7. I lost a whole hour of sleep last night, people. Daniel chapter 7, verse 13. I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man. Anybody?
Baptism of Jesus. Behold, this is my son whom I.
Okay, so you're going with the son part. Behold, that this is my son with whom I'm well pleased. There came with the clouds of heaven. What? No. How about Jesus' trial? Are you the Christ? And Jesus won't answer. And Jesus won't answer. And Jesus won't answer. Finally, he gives an answer, and it's an answer they don't like. Truly, truly, I say unto you, you will see the Son of Man coming with glory on the clouds of heaven. Do y'all remember that? Now I do. Somebody said, now I do. So that language, Jesus chooses intentionally. It is amazing how often I have heard so many preachers and teachers act like Jesus is saying something new. He's really never saying anything new. Like, maybe love your enemies is new to say it that directly, but the teaching about that is in the Old Testament already anyway. So it's still not new. He's fulfilling everything that's in the Old Testament, and it's amazing how often he just speaks with Scripture. What's making everyone angry about Jesus is not that he's saying something new, because that would leave everyone scratching their head. It's that Jesus is saying something old and telling them they didn't understand what was written, and now they're angry because of the way he's giving the interpretation. Are y'all with me? That's what makes people angry. Think about it. You can only get angry if you understood what he said. You can't get angry if you don't understand it. You're going to sit there with a puppy dog look if you don't understand. You know, like this. But you're not going to get angry. In order to get angry, you have to understand what the man just said. And what he said was in the Old Testament. So when they get angry at him at the trial, it's because he says, I tell you the truth, you'll see the Son of Man coming in glory on the clouds of heaven. And they tear their robe. Because he's quoting Daniel. He's quoting Ezekiel. He's quoting Jeremiah. And they're like, you think you're who? I'm the Son of Man that the Ancient of Days gave the kingdom to. And behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man. So in other words, he's human. Y'all with me? A son of man means he's human. And he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him, and to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. Now, God made a covenant with David. The covenant with David back in the day was what?
Rule over these lands. Your family.
Your family, your lineage will always have a member on the throne, but not you. So to David, he doesn't say your dominion will never pass away. He says, I'll always give you an heir to rule after you. But to this one, this Son of Man, he says, his dominion will never pass away. It's an everlasting dominion. So there's a difference in the way this is being said to this Son of Man than it was said to David. Are y'all with me? Because David's immortal and he's going to die. If your dominion never passes away and your rule never ceases, then something's weird about you. You're not dying. Or we'll find out later, spoiler alert, you died and then you came back after 3 days and you never will die again. Are y'all with me? So this one is worshiped and given glory with the Ancient of Days. Who's the Ancient of Days? God. You can say God. The Father, right? The Father. So the Father gives the Son, who is clearly also a human, but is also worshipped along with the Ancient of Days. See, this is weird. This is that God-man stuff. This kingdom and an everlasting dominion that will never pass away. Let's keep going down. Let's look at what's said about the fourth beast, which is the Roman Empire. Verse 23, chapter 7, verse 23 and following. Thus he said, this is an angel or somebody speaking to Daniel. As for the fourth beast, there shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all the kingdoms. And Rome was. And it shall devour the whole earth and trample it down and break it in pieces. And it did. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings shall arise, and another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the former ones, and shall put down 3 kings. He shall speak words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. So we are talking about a later emperor, and we talked about this in Revelation, that the Antichrist at the time is associated with, say, Nero, okay? Or you can associate him with Tiberius. So there are different emperors that you can look at and the kinds of persecution they put the church through. And shall think to change the times and the law, and they shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. What does that mean? Yes, time. Again, this is apocalyptic at this point. But the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away to be consumed and destroyed to the end. And it was. First by Germanic barbarians in the west, and then by Muslims in the east. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. And we're told that Jesus is seated at the right hand of God until his enemies are made his footstool. And every people group on planet Earth, there are people following Jesus Christ today. So it doesn't matter what your passport says. There are people there who are following Jesus. Our government has a problem with the Chinese Communist Party, the government of China. Our government has a beef with them, and they have a beef with us. And yet, in both the Chinese, it's not really an empire, kingdom, and the American empire, there are devotees of Jesus, and the church is growing faster in China today than in America. So in other words, no matter what's going on with human politics, who's still ruling? Jesus. Are y'all with me? So whatever's going on with wars and rumors of wars and political intrigue and the way people try to grab for power and all of this stuff, we'll get through all that eventually. It will be painful. People are going to die. We'll get through it. But Jesus is coming again, and he rules every bit in America as he does in China, every bit in China as he does in Tanzania, and so far and so forth. Everybody with me? It is amazing that there are people in every country in the world who follow the Christ. Even when I lived in Thailand, I had to bike 8 miles to a church, but there was a church there, and there were Thai people calling on the name of Jesus. I don't care where you go, you can't get away from the kingdom of the Christ. And Revelation, see, I did it just now. And Daniel gives us that vision that is like that of Revelation, which is apocalyptic in nature. It lets us see that the Christ rules and that all things are being put underneath him. And if we will endure to the end as the saints, then we will share in that victory and that glory. Everybody with me? So I guess I'm trying to say, keep your head up and hang in there. Put your helmet and your flak jacket on. Yeah, Rick?
Governments today are somewhat that these kind of government ongoing, and we're still having that battle.
Yeah, so there are some changes that I think I see. But yeah, for up until about World War II, it took that long for governments to stop trying, at least in the West, to stop trying to emulate Rome. But what's happening now with a move towards one world governance is not unlike Rome's desire to literally control the entire world. Every time they found a new land, they immediately tried to conquer it to bring it under their so-called Roman peace, the Pax Romana. Because the only way to create peace, in their view, in the world was to subjugate everyone under one rule. So this new world government may succeed where Rome only partially succeeded. But yeah, it's the same idea. I don't know if y'all have noticed this, but people don't have a different idea. The idea is to grab as much power as possible and to subjugate everybody under the rule of a few or one. And then suddenly everything will work. Well, here's the funny part about the lie of Satan. There is a sense in which the lie is true. If everyone would be united under one particular man named Jesus, everything will be okay. But sinners always take it upon themselves to be the end all be all, and it doesn't work. So when you see back to Nebuchadnezzar's, the dream that God gave this pagan king, all of these are kingdoms or empires that follow in succession. The world system only knows how to do one thing over and over and over. Create empire, create empire, create empire. And then this stone falls out of heaven. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone, right? The stone falls out of heaven and it grows into a huge mountain that fills the entire earth. And God says, you're very bad at self-rule. I'm going to establish my kingdom, and then my kingdom will be the only one that's left. And now we will have peace, and now we will have justice, and now we will have all these things. We will have wholeness. And so Christ is that king. So then you go back to, I know I'm kind of going on, and we got to get our kids to get to worship, but last thing I'll say for today, it makes the conversation between Jesus and Pilate that much more stark. Because Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you a king?" Did you say this? Did other people say it to you? Because you don't know who I am. Oh, so you are a king. Because he says, "My kingdom is not of this world." I was born for this purpose I have come. I am a king, but not in the way you think about it. We're not defining things the way you think about it. Because the world only knows how to do one empire after the next empire after the next empire, how to subjugate, control, trample underfoot. Instead of trampling under feet, I get down on my hands and knees and I wash feet. That whole conversation between Jesus and Pilate is recorded for a reason. It's cosmic. Angels were listening to that conversation. Yes? I love you, Jesus loves you.